Welcome, traveler, to a place of profound peace and ancient beauty. Let yourself settle into this moment. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing slow and deepen. Let the weight of your day begin to dissolve like morning mist over water. You are about to embark on a journey unlike any you have taken before. A journey not through distance but through time, not through effort but through gentle surrender to the flow of history. We are traveling back more than 3,000 years, to a warm evening in the year 1350 before the Common Era, to the banks of the greatest river the ancient world has ever known, to a civilization at the height of its power and grace. This is history to sleep to, a unique experience designed not to educate or inform in the traditional sense, though you may learn things along the way. This is instead an invitation to immerse yourself in another time, to let the rhythms of the ancient world calm your modern mind, to find in the distant past a pathway to present peace. There are no tests, no requirements, no need to remember dates or names. Simply allow yourself to be carried by the current of this story, to drift where it takes you, to rest in the embrace of deep time. Close your eyes if you wish, though you may also simply soften your gaze, letting your focus blur and disperse. We are leaving your world behind now, your time, your century. We are moving backward through the ages, watching history unfold in reverse. Past our present moment in the opening days of 2026, past the digital revolution and the age of flight, past the industrial transformation and the age of exploration, past the Middle Ages with their castles and cathedrals, past the fall of Rome and the rise of Christianity, past the birth of Christ himself, deeper and deeper into antiquity. We float backward through time like a feather on a breeze, weightless and unhurried. Past Alexander the Great and his conquests, past the classical age of Greece with its philosophers and poets, past the Persian Empire in its glory, backward and backward until we arrive in an age so ancient that the pyramids of Giza, which seem impossibly old to us, are already over 1,000 years old, already ancient monuments to an even earlier time. We arrive in the 14th century before the Common Era, in the 18th dynasty of the Egyptian Empire, during the reign of the pharaoh Amenhotep III, a time of unprecedented wealth and power, of peace and prosperity, of artistic achievement and architectural ambition. This is Egypt at its zenith, the most advanced civilization on earth. A culture that has already endured for nearly 2,000 years and will endure for more than 1,000 years more. Take another slow breath. Feel yourself settling into this time, this place. The air around you is warm, not the oppressive heat of midday but the gentle warmth of late afternoon fading into evening. The quality of light is changing, that magical hour that photographers call golden hour, when the sun hangs low in the western sky and bathes everything in a soft, honey glow. You find yourself on the Nile, the great river, the lifeblood of Egypt, the reason this civilization exists at all. Without the Nile, Egypt would be nothing but desert, lifeless and uninhabitable. But the Nile flows northward through the land, bringing water and fertile soil, creating a narrow green ribbon of light through thousands of miles of sand and stone. You are on a boat, but not a modern vessel. This is a simple reed boat, the kind that Egyptian fishermen and travelers have used for centuries and will use for centuries more. The hull is made from bundles of papyrus reeds, bound tightly together and curved upward at both ends. It is surprisingly stable, surprisingly comfortable, rocking gently with the movement of the water. You recline on cushions near the center of the boat, thick pads filled with straw and covered with linen, dyed in soft earth tones. The boat is being guided by a single boatman, an Egyptian whose dark skin is weathered by sun and wind, whose strong arms manage the long steering oar with easy competence. He does not speak to you, there is no need for words. He knows the river, knows where the current flows strongest, where the hidden sandbanks lurk beneath the surface. The boat drifts more than it travels. There is no urgency, no destination that must be reached by a certain hour. You are simply moving with the river, allowing it to carry you northward at its own patient pace. The only sounds are the gentle splash of water against the reed hull, the occasional call of a bird, the whisper of a breeze moving through the papyrus reeds that line the river banks. The Nile here is wide and serene. The water is not the muddy brown you might expect but a soft gray-green, reflecting the sky above. The surface is calm, disturbed only by small ripples where fish rise to feed on insects, or where water birds dive and emerge with silver catches in their beaks. On either side of the river, the landscape unfolds in horizontal bands of color, like layers in a painting. Closest to the water is the bright green of the cultivation, the narrow strip of fertile land where Egypt grows its food: wheat and barley, vegetables and fruits, flax for linen. The green is vivid, almost unnaturally bright, a sharp contrast to what lies beyond. Beyond the cultivated zone, the desert begins abruptly. There is no gradual transition, no buffer zone, just a stark line where life ends and emptiness begins. The desert rises in cliffs and plateaus, in dunes and rocky outcrops, stretching away to the horizon in shades of gold and amber and rust. This is the Red Land, as the Egyptians call it, the domain of chaos and death, the opposite of the Black Land, the fertile soil along the river where order and life prevail. The sun is descending toward the western horizon, toward the desert, toward the realm of the dead. In Egyptian cosmology, the sun god travels across the sky during the day and then descends into the underworld at night, journeying through darkness and danger before being reborn at dawn in the east. The setting sun is thus both an ending and a promise, death and renewal, eternally cycling, eternally reliable. The light is extraordinary now. The sun, no longer harsh and blinding, casts long shadows and bathes everything in warm gold. The desert cliffs glow as if lit from within. The water reflects the sky, turning from gray-green to burnished copper. Even the simple linen clothing of the boatmen seems to shimmer and shift in the changing light. You trail your hand in the water. It is warm, almost the same temperature as the air, pleasant and soothing. The water flows past your fingers, moving northward as it has moved for millions of years, carrying with it the soil eroded from the mountains of Ethiopia far to the south, the rich black silt that will be deposited on the fields during the annual flood, renewing the land, making life possible. The flood has already come and gone this year. It arrived in midsummer, as it always does, rising over a period of weeks until the entire valley was transformed into a vast lake dotted with islands where the villages stand on slightly higher ground. Then, gradually, the water receded, leaving behind its gift of fertile mud, and the farmers planted their seeds in the soft earth. And now, months later, the crops are growing, taking advantage of the season of mild weather before the brutal heat of summer returns. This cycle is the foundation of Egyptian life, the rhythm to which everything else is set. The flood determines when to plant and when to harvest. It influences when pharaohs go to war. You cannot campaign during the flood, when movement is difficult and the army is needed for agricultural work. It shapes the Egyptian understanding of time itself, which is divided into 3 seasons: flood, growth, and harvest. These seasons, not our modern months or weeks, are the meaningful divisions of the year. As you drift northward with the current, you begin to notice signs of human presence along the banks. Small villages appear, clusters of mud brick houses with flat roofs, painted white to reflect the sun. Palm trees provide shade, their fronds rustling gently in the breeze. Fields stretch back from the river, their precise rectangular boundaries marked by low earthen banks that control the irrigation water. The villages are quiet now, in the gentle hour between the labor of the day and the meals and rest of the evening. A few people move about, small figures at this distance, going about their final tasks before darkness falls. You can see women carrying water jars balanced on their heads, moving with the straight-backed grace that comes from a lifetime of such work. You can see children driving goats or geese home from grazing. You can see men checking the irrigation channels, ensuring water flows where it is needed. These are ordinary Egyptians, the vast majority of the population, the farmers and laborers and craftspeople whose work sustains the civilization. They are not pharaohs or priests or nobles. They will leave no monuments bearing their names, no tombs filled with treasures, no written records of their deeds. But they are the foundation upon which everything else rests. Their labor in the fields produces the surplus that feeds the cities, supports the temples, finances the armies, enables the arts and architecture that Egypt is famous for. Their lives are simple but not necessarily harsh. Egypt in this period is prosperous and stable. There is enough food. The climate is warm year-round. No one freezes in winter as they might in northern lands. The social order is well established, and while it is hierarchical and offers little opportunity for advancement, it also provides security and predictability. Everyone knows their role, their place, their obligations and rights. As your boat continues its lazy progress, you pass closer to one of these villages. The details become clearer. The houses are small but solid, made from bricks of Nile mud mixed with straw and dried in the sun. The roofs are flat and are used as extra living space. You can see people sitting up there, enjoying the evening breeze. Some houses have small enclosed courtyards where cooking is done and animals are kept at night. The smells reach you now, carried on the breeze. Wood smoke from cooking fires. The sweet scent of baking bread. Bread is the staple of the Egyptian diet, eaten at every meal, made fresh daily in cylindrical clay ovens. The earthy smell of the river itself, of mud and water and growing things. The slightly acrid scent of animal dung, used as fuel and fertilizer, a smell that would have been omnipresent in the ancient world but that we rarely encounter in our modern sanitized lives. You hear voices now, distant and indistinct, the murmur of conversation in a language you do not understand, ancient Egyptian, a language related to nothing you know, written in those mysterious hieroglyphs that will not be deciphered for more than 3,000 years, not until the discovery of the Rosetta Stone in the era of Napoleon Bonaparte. But though you cannot understand the words, the tones are recognizable, mothers calling to children, neighbors greeting each other, the gentle sounds of human community at the end of a day. A dog barks, that universal sound that transcends millennia. Children laugh, another sound that needs no translation. From somewhere comes music, the thin clear notes of a flute, playing a melody that is alien to your ears but somehow still evocative, still stirring something in your chest. As you pass the village, a few faces turn toward the river, toward your boat. They show mild curiosity but no alarm, no particular interest. Boats on the Nile are common as cars on a modern highway. The river is Egypt's main road, the primary means of transport and communication. Goods and people move up and down the Nile constantly, linking the entire country into a single economic and political unit. The boat drifts on, and the village falls away behind you. The sounds fade. The smoke from the cooking fires dissipates. You return to the realm of water and sky, of light and space, of peace. The sun is lower now, approaching the horizon. The quality of light has shifted from gold to something richer, more amber, tinged with pink and orange. The sky is performing its evening transformation, that daily miracle that ancient peoples must have witnessed with a mixture of familiarity and wonder. How many thousands of times had the Egyptians seen the sun set? How many thousands of times would they see it again? Yet it never became ordinary, never lost its power to move and inspire. You notice now that the river is busier than it first appeared. Other boats move on the water, some traveling south against the current with sails raised to catch the prevailing north wind, others traveling north with the current, sails furled, simply drifting as you are. There are small fishing boats, single-person vessels made of bundled reeds. There are larger cargo boats carrying goods to market, jars of grain, blocks of stone, bales of linen. There is even a large state barge in the distance, its prow decorated with the symbol of the pharaoh, probably carrying officials on some government business. All of these craft move slowly, patiently, without the roar of engines or the wake of speedboats. The river is a place of gentle motion, of time measured not in minutes, but in the slow passage from one bend to another, one village to the next. There is something deeply restful about this pace, this acceptance of the river's natural rhythm rather than the imposition of human urgency upon it. A formation of birds passes overhead, dark silhouettes against the colored sky. You recognize them as ibises, those sacred birds associated with the god Thoth, god of wisdom and writing. They fly in a perfect V, headed somewhere known only to them, their wings beating in silent unison. Watching them, you feel a connection not just to ancient Egypt but to the natural world that existed before humans and will exist after, the world of animal instinct and seasonal migration, of patterns older than civilization. The light continues to fade, but darkness is still far off. This is the long, gentle twilight, the extended transition between day and night. There is time yet before the stars appear, time to simply exist in this liminal space, this threshold between one state and another. Your boat passes an island in the middle of the river, a small patch of earth and palm trees and papyrus reeds. Such islands dot the Nile, especially during the low water season. Some are cultivated, some are left wild, providing habitat for birds and fish and crocodiles. Yes, crocodiles. Though they are not visible at the moment, they are here, basking on muddy banks or gliding through the water with only their eyes and nostrils breaking the surface. The Egyptians respect them, fear them, even worship them as manifestations of the god Sobek, but they also hunt them and harvest their eggs and live alongside them with the pragmatic adaptation that comes from centuries of coexistence. The world of ancient Egypt is one where humans and animals live in closer proximity than we are accustomed to. Dogs and cats in the villages, sacred animals in the temples, cattle and donkeys and geese in the fields, crocodiles and hippos in the river, jackals and lions in the desert fringes. The boundary between human and animal, between civilization and nature, is more permeable here, less absolute than it will become in later ages. As the light fades further, lamps begin to appear in the villages along the banks. Small points of warm light, oil lamps burning inside houses, providing just enough illumination for evening tasks and conversations. These tiny flames are precious. Oil is valuable, not to be wasted, so most people go to sleep soon after darkness falls and wake with the dawn. The rhythm of human activity in the ancient world is tied much more closely to the sun than ours, constrained by the limitations of firelight and lamplight, the darkness a more absolute boundary. But you are not bound by these limitations. You recline on your cushions, comfortable and secure, the boat rocking gently beneath you, the river carrying you onward through the deepening twilight. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. You are simply here, present, experiencing this moment that exists outside of time, this window into a world that vanished millennia ago, but that lives again in imagination and narrative. Let yourself sink deeper into the peace of this moment. Feel the gentle motion of the boat. Hear the soft sounds of water and breeze and distant life. See the colors of the sky and the river and the land, all softening now, becoming muted and dreamlike. Smell the warm air, rich with the scents of the Nile Valley. Let all of these sensations wash over you, calming and centering, connecting you to this ancient time and place. The journey continues, unhurried and eternal, carrying you forward through the evening toward whatever wonders await downstream, toward the great city of Thebes and beyond, toward sleep and dreams and the deep rest that comes from surrendering to the current. As twilight deepens into the early evening, the river reveals more of its character, more of the life that depends upon it, and shapes itself to its rhythms. The boat continues its gentle drift, and you find yourself becoming attuned to the subtle sounds that fill the air, sounds that would be drowned out in daytime but that emerge now in the relative quiet of dusk. There is the rhythmic splash of oars from somewhere behind you, another boat making its way upstream, the rowers working in unison, their oars entering and leaving the water in a steady cadence that has its own music. The sound grows closer, passes alongside at a distance, then fades gradually as the boat continues its laborious journey southward. Traveling against the current requires effort, requires cooperation, requires the kind of patient strength that characterizes so much of ancient Egyptian life. From the western bank comes the creak of a water wheel, one of those ingenious devices that lift water from the river to the higher fields. You cannot see it clearly in the fading light, but you can imagine it, a large wooden wheel with clay pots attached, turned by an ox walking in circles, the pots scooping water from the river and pouring it into irrigation channels as the wheel rotates. The sound is rhythmic, almost hypnotic, the creak of wood and rope, the splash of water being lifted and poured, the occasional voice of the farmer urging his ox onward. These water wheels, called shadaf or sakia, are essential to Egyptian agriculture. The Nile flood provides the foundation of fertility, but human ingenuity extends that gift, moving water beyond the flood zone, allowing cultivation of land that would otherwise remain dry. It is simple technology, requiring no metal more complex than bronze, but it works, has worked for centuries, will work for centuries more. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most enduring. The riverbank on the eastern side draws closer now as the current carries your boat near the shore. Here the cultivation is particularly lush, the fields dense with growing crops. You can make out the vertical stems of wheat and barley, standing perhaps 3 feet high at this stage of growth, their heads just beginning to form the grains that will be harvested in a few months. Between the grain fields are patches of green that must be vegetables, onions, garlic, lettuce, cucumbers, all staples of the Egyptian diet. At the edge of a field, a group of women are working even as darkness approaches. They are gathering vegetables, it appears, filling large baskets with the day's harvest. Their movements are practiced and efficient, bent at the waist, hands moving quickly, plucking and cutting, dropping the produce into the baskets. They work in silence or near silence, too far away for their voices to carry clearly, but there is a sense of companionship in their proximity, in the shared labor. Women's work in ancient Egypt is essential and varied. They are not confined to the home as they will be in some later cultures. They work in the fields, especially during harvest. They tend gardens. They make textiles, spinning flax into thread and weaving it into linen, the fabric that everyone wears in this hot climate. They brew beer, which is the common drink for all ages, safer than water, nutritious, mildly alcoholic. They participate in commerce, buying and selling in markets, sometimes running their own businesses. They have legal rights. They can own property, make contracts, initiate divorce, inherit equally with their brothers. In many ways, women in ancient Egypt have more rights and freedoms than women will have in later civilizations, including Greek and Roman societies that are often held up as models of advancement. It is a reminder that history does not move in a straight line toward progress, that gains can be lost, that ancient does not necessarily mean primitive or backward. The women in the field finish their work and shoulder their baskets, heavy loads that they balance with practiced ease. They begin walking toward a village visible in the near distance, a line of figures moving through the gathering dusk, their silhouettes dark against the lighter sky. One of them is singing, a voice carrying clearly across the water, a work song probably, something to lighten the load and mark the rhythm of walking. The melody is unfamiliar but somehow still recognizable as song, as music, as that universal human impulse to shape sound into pattern and meaning. Your boat drifts past the village itself, close enough now to see details. The houses are clustered together, sharing walls, creating a compact settlement that minimizes the land taken from cultivation. The streets between houses are narrow, barely wide enough for a loaded donkey to pass through, winding in organic curves that follow no plan beyond practicality and the gradual accretion of buildings over time. In one of these narrow streets, children are playing some kind of game. Even in the fading light, they have energy, running and laughing, their voices high and clear. Children's games, like children's laughter, are another human universal. These Egyptian children play games not so different from games that children will play 3,000 years later. Chasing games, hiding games, games with balls and sticks, games that require only imagination and companionship. An older child, perhaps 10 or 11 years old, emerges from a house carrying a small oil lamp, its flame protected by one cupped hand. The child walks carefully, slowly, the lamp held steady, heading toward another house down the street. Running an errand, perhaps, or delivering something to a neighbor. The lamp creates a small sphere of golden light around the child, a moving point of warmth in the deepening blue of evening. This is a world lit by fire, by burning oil or tallow or wax, by flames that flicker and dance and must be carefully tended and protected. There are no light switches, no certainty of illumination. Light is precious, must be created through effort and resources, can be extinguished by a gust of wind or a careless movement. Living in such a world creates a different relationship to darkness, less fear perhaps because it is so familiar, but also more respect, more awareness of the boundary between light and dark, seeing and not seeing, safety and danger. As your boat moves past the village, you notice a small shrine at the water's edge, a simple structure with a roof supported by painted columns. Inside, barely visible in the gloom, is a statue or stele, a marker of some local god or goddess, placed here at the boundary between land and water, civilization and the wild river. A few offerings lie before it: flowers, now wilted, a small clay bowl that might have contained beer or wine, a loaf of bread beginning to crumble in the evening dew. Religion in ancient Egypt is omnipresent but also pragmatic. The gods are everywhere, in the sky and the river, in the crops and the animals, in the pharaoh and the storms, in birth and death and every moment between. But the relationship with the gods is transactional. You give offerings, perform rituals, maintain the temples, and in return the gods maintain the order of the world, ensure the flood comes, keep chaos at bay. It is a contract, a relationship of mutual obligation, not unlike the social contracts that bind people to each other and to the pharaoh. The river widens here, and your boat drifts toward the center, away from the shores, into the main channel where the current flows strongest. The villages recede, becoming distant points of light, small clusters of human habitation surrounded by vast darkness. The sky above is deeper now, the blue almost purple, and the first stars are beginning to appear in the east, faint but growing brighter as the darkness deepens. The sound of the river itself becomes more prominent now that you are farther from shore. It is not a roaring or rushing sound, the Nile is too large, too placid for that. Instead, it is a constant gentle presence, a soft lapping and gurgling, the sound of water flowing over stones and around sandbanks, of small waves created by wind or boats, or fish breaking the surface. It is a sound that could easily fade into the background, become unnoticed, but if you focus on it, it has depth and texture, a complexity that rewards attention. Time on the river moves differently than time on land. There are no landmarks rushing past, no sense of speed or urgency. You are simply moving, carried by a force larger than yourself, surrendering to the current rather than fighting against it. It is a deeply restful way to travel, requiring nothing from you, asking only that you be present and receptive. The air is cooling now, though it remains warm by any reasonable standard. In Egypt's climate, the temperature difference between day and night is significant. Days can be blazingly hot, while nights are mild and pleasant, sometimes even cool enough to require a light covering. The breeze picks up slightly, carrying with it the smell of water and vegetation, of distant cooking fires and the earthy scent of the land itself. You hear a sound that might be music, very distant, coming from somewhere far ahead. It is too faint to make out clearly, just a suggestion of melody, of voices raised in song or instruments playing. Perhaps a village celebration, a feast or festival. The Egyptians loved celebrations, marked many occasions with music and dancing and feasting, religious festivals honoring the gods, harvest celebrations, royal anniversaries, personal milestones like marriages and births. Music was an integral part of Egyptian life, not reserved for special occasions but woven into daily existence. Workers sang in the fields to mark rhythm and maintain spirits. Priests chanted in temples. Professional musicians performed at banquets for the wealthy. Instruments included harps, lutes, flutes, drums, rattles, and the sistrum, a special rattle associated with the goddess Hathor, used in religious ceremonies. The music itself is lost, no recordings or notation systems survived, but we know it existed, know it mattered, can imagine its sounds from the instruments depicted in tomb paintings and the descriptions in ancient texts. The distant music fades, or perhaps you simply drift out of range of it, the river carrying you onward. New sounds emerge, the distinctive snort of a hippopotamus somewhere in the darkness, a reminder that the river belongs as much to its animal inhabitants as to the humans who use it. Hippos are dangerous, unpredictable, responsible for more human deaths than crocodiles, but they are also respected, associated with the goddess Tauret, protector of pregnant women and childbirth. Despite the danger they pose, hippos have a place in Egyptian life, in Egyptian thought. Everything has its place in the Egyptian worldview. Even dangerous or unpleasant things serve a purpose, fit into the larger pattern, contribute to the balance that must be maintained. This is different from later Western thinking that tends to divide the world into good and evil, useful and harmful, things to be embraced and things to be eliminated. The Egyptian mindset is more holistic, more accepting of complexity and contradiction. Your boat passes another island, larger than the previous one, perhaps a half-mile long. Palm trees are silhouetted against the sky, their distinctive shapes unmistakable even in the dim light. There might be people living on this island. Some islands support small communities during the low water season, though they are abandoned when the flood comes and the water rises. It is a transient existence but sustainable, providing access to fishing and waterfowl hunting, a different way of life from the settled agricultural villages. On the western bank, the desert cliffs are now just dark masses against the slightly lighter sky. By day they are golden and beautiful, but in the fading light they become more mysterious, more ominous. The Egyptians associated the west with death and the afterlife. The sun sets in the west, descending into the underworld, and so the west becomes the direction of endings, of transformation, of the journey the dead must take. Most Egyptian tombs and cemeteries are on the west bank of the Nile, carved into the desert cliffs, deliberately positioned in the realm of the setting sun. The famous Valley of the Kings, where pharaohs are buried in secret tombs cut deep into the rock, is on the west bank at Thebes. The great necropolises of Memphis and other cities are on the west bank. East is for the living, for cities and temples and palaces. West is for the dead, for tombs and mortuary temples, for the eternal. This geographic division reflects and reinforces the Egyptian understanding of life and death as complementary states, separated but connected, opposite sides of the same river, literally and metaphorically. Death is not the end but a transition, a crossing to another shore where life continues in a different form, where the same sun that sets in the west each evening is reborn in the east each morning. As you contemplate these thoughts, drifting on the eternal river, you notice a funeral procession on the eastern shore, figures moving slowly in the near darkness, carrying something, a body, wrapped and prepared for burial, being transported from the village to a boat that will ferry it across to the western shore, to its final resting place. The procession moves with dignity and sorrow, accompanied by the sounds of wailing, the formal expressions of grief that mark the passing of a community member. Death is common in the ancient world, more visible, less sanitized than it will become in later ages. People die at home, surrounded by family. Bodies are prepared by family members or local specialists, not hidden away in hospitals and funeral homes. Burial is a community event, witnessed and participated in by neighbors and relatives. Death is sad, certainly, but it is also normal, expected, woven into the fabric of daily life rather than denied or avoided. The funeral procession reaches the boat, and the body is placed aboard with care. The boat pushes off from the shore, heading across the river toward the western bank, its passage marked by the splash of oars and the continued sound of mourning. You watch until it disappears into the darkness, this final journey, this crossing from one state to another, from life to death, from east to west. The encounter leaves you thoughtful, reflective. The ancients understood something that modernity often forgets, that endings are also beginnings, that death is part of life, that acceptance of mortality gives meaning to the time we have. The Egyptians did not deny death or pretend it did not exist. Instead, they built their entire civilization around it, created elaborate rituals and beliefs and structures to honor it and prepare for it, and ensure that it was not truly an ending but a transformation. The river flows on, indifferent to human concerns, ancient and eternal. It flowed before the first humans came to its banks. It will flow long after the last Egyptian dynasty falls and is forgotten. It is a presence older than history, deeper than culture, more fundamental than any human institution. To float on it is to connect with something primordial, something that puts human endeavors in perspective, that reminds us of our small place in the vastness of time and nature. More lights appear ahead, more numerous than the scattered villages you have been passing. This must be a larger settlement, perhaps a provincial capital or important trading center. The lights form a line along the eastern bank, extending for what must be a considerable distance. As you drift closer, you can make out the shapes of buildings, larger and more substantial than the simple village houses. There are proper streets with buildings facing them, not the organic cluster of a village, but something more planned, more urban. The sounds that reach you are different too, more numerous, more varied. Voices in conversation, many overlapping. The clatter of pots and tools. The braying of donkeys. The barking of dogs. Music from multiple sources, creating a layered soundscape that speaks of population density, of people living in close proximity, of social complexity. This is a town, a place where people come to trade and conduct business, where craftsmen have workshops and merchants have stalls, where government officials collect taxes and resolve disputes, where priests maintain temples to the gods. Towns like this dot the Nile, serving as links in the chain that connects the villages to the great cities, the common people to the pharaoh and his government. But you do not stop here, do not go ashore. Your boat continues its drift, passing the town at a comfortable distance, close enough to witness but far enough to maintain the peaceful separation the observers remove. You are traveling through this world but not of it, a ghost from a distant future, able to see but not to touch, to witness but not to participate. The town falls away behind you, its lights diminishing, its sounds fading back into the general nighttime ambience of the river. Once again you are in relative solitude, surrounded by water and sky, moving through the darkness with only the stars above and the current below to guide you. The evening continues its gentle progression toward full night. The stars multiply overhead, becoming thick and brilliant, undiminished by any artificial light, unobscured by pollution or atmosphere. The Milky Way becomes visible, that river of stars that the Egyptians saw as a celestial reflection of the Nile, a pathway for the gods, a reminder that the patterns of earth are reflected in the heavens. Let yourself be held by this gentle movement, this drift through ancient time and space. Let the sounds of the river and the night surround you. Let the peace of this journey seep into your bones, calming and centering you, preparing you for the deeper rest that awaits. The journey continues, unhurried and eternal, carrying you forward through the darkness toward Thebes and its wonders, toward sleep and dreams and the profound rest that comes from surrendering to forces larger than yourself. As the night deepens and the stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, the river carries you southward, closer to the greatest city of this ancient world. You cannot see it yet, but you can sense it somehow, a change in the density of settlement along the banks, more lights visible, more boats passing on the water, a subtle increase in the energy and activity even at this late hour. Thebes. The Greeks will call it that, but to the Egyptians of this time it is Wazit, the city of the scepter, the southern capital, the seat of the great god who has risen from a local deity to become king of all gods, merged with the sun god to become the supreme power, the hidden one, the creator, the ultimate divine force. Thebes in 1350 before the Common Era is at the absolute peak of its power and glory. The 18th dynasty rules from here, a line of warrior pharaohs who have driven out foreign invaders, reunited Egypt, and expanded the empire to unprecedented size. Egyptian armies controlled territory from Nubia in the south to Syria in the north, bringing tribute and wealth flowing into Thebes from across the known world. This wealth is visible in the monuments being constructed, in the temples rising stone by stone to honor the gods and glorify the pharaohs who build them. Even now, in the darkness, you can hear sounds that suggest the massive construction projects underway. Distant rhythmic impacts that might be hammers on chisels, might be stone being moved and positioned, might be the never-ending labor of shaping the eternal from the raw materials of the earth. The eastern horizon is beginning to show the faintest suggestion of lightning, though true dawn is still hours away. This is the deepest part of night, the time when even the most wakeful begin to feel the pull of sleep, when the world is at its quietest, when the boundary between waking and dreaming becomes permeable. Your boat drifts on, and gradually the eastern bank begins to reveal structures more massive than anything you have seen so far. At first they are just darker shapes against the dark sky, barely distinguishable from the landscape. But as you draw closer, as your eyes adjust and interpret what they are seeing, the scale becomes apparent. These are temples. Not the small village shrines you have passed, but massive stone structures, buildings designed to last forever, to awe and inspire, to serve as dwellings for gods and as statements of human ambition and devotion. Even in the darkness, even incomplete as some of them are, their presence is overwhelming. The nearest is Karnak, though that is not what the Egyptians call it. That name comes from a much later Arabic word. To the people of this time, this is Ipataisit, the most select of places, the great temple complex dedicated to the supreme god. It has been under construction for centuries, each pharaoh adding to it, expanding it, trying to outdo their predecessors in the scale and grandeur of their contributions. The complex covers an enormous area. Eventually it will encompass more than 200 acres, making it one of the largest religious sites in the ancient world. There are multiple temples within the complex, pylons and courtyards, obelisks and statues, sacred lakes and processional ways. The main temple has a hypostyle hall that is being constructed right now, in these very years, a forest of massive columns that will eventually number 134, each one 30 feet in circumference, the tallest reaching 70 feet into the air. You cannot see these details in the darkness, but you can sense the scale, the ambition, the sheer magnitude of stone and effort involved in creating such a place. And you can hear the sounds of construction, distant but unmistakable, the chip of chisels on stone, the scrape and rumble of blocks being moved, the occasional shout of an overseer coordinating the labor. This work continues even at night, though at a reduced pace. The construction of temples is considered sacred work, urgent work, work that cannot wait. Thousands of laborers are involved, not slaves as popular imagination might suggest, but free workers, farmers fulfilling their labor obligations to the pharaoh during the months when agricultural work is slow. They are fed and housed, their work is hard but not forced, and they take pride in contributing to these eternal monuments. The techniques used are remarkably sophisticated. The massive stone blocks, some weighing many tons, are quarried using copper tools and wooden wedges, transported on sledges pulled by teams of men, positioned with ropes and levers and ramps with a precision that seems almost impossible given the available technology. Yet here they are, these temples rising stone by stone, destined to stand for thousands of years, to survive the fall of the dynasties that built them, to inspire wonder in civilizations not yet born. As your boat drifts past the eastern bank, past the temple complex that is visible only as a massive shadow against the stars, you notice fires burning in several locations within the construction site. These are not accidental fires but controlled flames, probably hearths where workers warm themselves during the cool night hours, or perhaps fires used in some aspect of the construction process, heating water, preparing mortar, providing light for night work. The sounds are rhythmic, hypnotic in their repetition. The impact of tools on stone creates a kind of music, unintentional but compelling. Each strike rings out clearly in the night air, echoing off the stone surfaces, creating patterns of sound that overlap and interweave. There is something meditative about listening to this labor, this patient transformation of raw stone into carved glory, this human effort directed toward the eternal. Between the rhythmic sounds of construction, you hear voices, men calling to each other, coordinating their efforts, probably speaking in terse practical phrases that need no elaboration. Move left. Lift now. Hold steady. The universal language of cooperative labor, transcending specific words, conveyed as much through tone and timing as through meaning. The river widens here, and on the western bank, the bank of the dead, the bank of the setting sun, you can make out even in the darkness the shapes of mortuary temples, structures built to honor deceased pharaohs, to maintain their cults, to ensure their names and memories persist forever. These temples are smaller than the great complexes on the eastern bank but no less impressive, each one a statement of royal power and divine status. Behind these mortuary temples, invisible in the darkness but known to exist, are the tombs themselves, cut deep into the desert cliffs, hidden in valleys and wadis, protected by elaborate security measures and by curses inscribed on walls and doorways. The pharaohs are buried with treasures beyond imagining, with everything they might need in the afterlife, with magic spells and protective amulets, with the carefully preserved bodies that will serve as vessels for their spirits. The tombs being prepared now will lie undisturbed for more than 3,000 years. Some will be discovered by archaeologists in the modern era, their treasures extracted and displayed in museums, their secrets revealed to a world the ancient Egyptians could never have imagined. Others remain undiscovered still, waiting in the darkness, patient as stone, holding their secrets until someone finds the entrance, breaks the seal, descends into the past. But that is the future. Now, in this moment, the tombs are being built, the pharaohs are alive, the civilization is at its peak. Now is the time of confidence and power, of faith in the eternal nature of the kingdom, of certainty that the gods are pleased and the empire secure. Your boat continues its slow progress, passing along the eastern bank where the great temples stand. To the south of Karnak is another temple complex, smaller but equally magnificent in its own way, Luxor, or as the Egyptians call it, Ipatrisit, the southern sanctuary. This temple is also dedicated to the supreme god, but in a different aspect, celebrating his role in the annual Opet festival when the statue of the god is carried in procession from Karnak to Luxor along a ceremonial avenue lined with sphinx statues. The avenue itself is under construction now, visible even in the night as a broad cleared path, a corridor of sacred space connecting the two temple complexes. Eventually, hundreds of sphinx statues will line this path, each one carved from stone, each one representing the pharaoh in his role as intermediary between gods and humans, as protector and provider, as the living embodiment of divine order. These sphinxes are not yet in place. The avenue is a work in progress, like so much else in Thebes. But the vision is clear, the plan is set, and the work continues day and night, year after year, generation after generation. The Egyptians think in terms of eternity, build for eternity, create monuments that are designed to outlast not just individual lives but entire dynasties, entire ages of the world. There is something both inspiring and humbling about this long view, this willingness to begin projects that will not be completed in one lifetime, or even in several. The workers chipping away at stone tonight will not see the finished temple. The pharaoh who commissions these works may not see them completed. But they build anyway, trusting that their successors will continue, that the vision will be realized, that the effort will not be in vain. This is so different from the modern mindset, which tends to think in terms of quarters and fiscal years, of immediate returns and rapid completion. The ancient Egyptians had a patience, a perspective, that came from their stable civilization, their predictable river, their confidence in the basic patterns of existence. They could afford to think in terms of centuries because their society had already lasted for centuries, and showed every sign of lasting for centuries more. As you drift past these monuments, past these works in progress, you might wonder what the workers think, the men laboring in shifts through day and night to raise these structures. Do they understand the significance of what they are building? Do they take pride in their contribution to eternity? Or is it simply work, simply what must be done, simply the obligation owed to Pharaoh and gods? Probably all of these things at once. Humans are complicated, capable of holding multiple perspectives simultaneously. The work can be hard and meaningful, obligatory and prideful, tedious and significant. The workers may not think in grand terms about eternity and legacy, but they can still appreciate the magnificence of what they are creating, can still find satisfaction in skill well applied, in stones perfectly fitted, and their names perhaps carved in a hidden location, a small immortality earned through labor. The sounds of construction begin to fade as your boat moves past the main temple complexes, but they do not disappear entirely. Even in the residential areas of the city, which you are approaching now, there is always building and rebuilding, the continuous maintenance and expansion that keeps the city alive. Houses collapse and are rebuilt. Walls crack and are repaired. New structures rise where old ones stood. A city is a living thing, constantly changing, constantly being remade by the people who inhabit it. The lights of the city proper appear now, more numerous than in any town you have passed. Thebes at its height has a population of perhaps 50,000 people, an enormous number by ancient standards, making it one of the largest cities in the world. These people live in houses packed close together, in neighborhoods that have developed organically over time, in a dense urban environment that would feel familiar to anyone who has lived in a pre-modern city. Even at this hour, there is activity. You can hear voices from the streets near the river, see the glow of fires and lamps, sense the presence of people who are awake for various reasons, workers on night shifts, guards patrolling, people unable to sleep, individuals engaged in the various activities that happen under cover of darkness in any city. A boat approaches, traveling south as you are, but moving faster, its crew rowing with purpose. As it passes, you catch a glimpse of its passengers, officials of some kind, well-dressed, traveling on government business that cannot wait for daylight. They do not notice you, intent on their own concerns, and they are quickly passed, the sound of their oars fading into the night. The river here is busy even at night. Boats move constantly, coming and going, transporting people and goods, connecting the different parts of the city, linking Thebes to the villages and towns up and down the Nile. The river is more than a geographic feature. It is the circulatory system of Egyptian civilization, the means by which everything flows, the unifying element that makes the entire enterprise possible. Without the Nile, there would be no Egypt. With it, a civilization has flourished for nearly 2,000 years already and will continue for more than 1,000 years after this moment. The river is the constant, the foundation, the gift of the gods that makes life possible in what would otherwise be uninhabitable desert. As you continue past the city, past the lights and sounds of human habitation, you notice that the eastern horizon is definitely lighter now. Not the light of sunrise yet, but the anticipation of it, the slow transformation of the sky from black to deep blue to a paler shade that promises the coming day. But sunrise is still far off, still hours away. For now, the night persists, and you continue your drift, carried by the eternal current, moving through the darkness with only the stars above and the ancient city fading behind you. The sounds of Thebes diminish gradually, becoming background noise, then memory, then silence. You return to the realm of water and sky, of night and the gentle rhythm of the boat rocking on small waves of peace. The monuments you have passed, the temples rising stone by stone, the statues being carved, the tombs being hollowed out of desert cliffs, all of these will endure. They will stand through the centuries to come, through the fall of the new kingdom and the foreign conquests that follow, through the Persian and Greek and Roman occupations, through the coming of Christianity and Islam, through empires that rise and fall, through the forgetting of the hieroglyphic script and the later rediscovery, through everything. Thousands of years from now, in the era you come from, tourists will walk through these same temples, will photograph these same columns, will stand in awe before the scale and beauty of what ancient hands created. The temples will be ruins by then, damaged by time and earthquake and human carelessness, but they will still be magnificent, still capable of inspiring wonder. And on quiet nights, when the tourist crowds have departed and the modern city of Luxor has grown quiet, perhaps something of this night will still linger, the memory of the sounds of construction, the vision of a civilization at its peak, the sense of human ambition reaching toward eternity, and, remarkably, achieving it. Let yourself rest in that thought, in the knowledge that some things endure, that human effort can create lasting beauty, that the work of hands and hearts can touch the future in ways the workers could never imagine. The boat drifts on, carrying you forward through the night, toward the southern reaches of the city, toward quieter waters, toward the deep peace that awaits as night transitions slowly, inevitably, toward the promise of dawn. The great city of Thebes falls away behind you now, its lights growing fainter, its sounds becoming whispers and then silence. The river carries you southward still, away from the monuments and the crowds, away from the density of human habitation, back into the quieter realms where the Nile flows through countryside dotted only occasionally with small settlements. The sky above has undergone a subtle transformation. The deep black of full night has given way to something softer, a darkness that is no longer absolute but tinged with the faintest suggestion of blue. The stars remain brilliant, countless thousands of them scattered across the heavens, but they seem somehow gentler now, their light less harsh, less stark against the lightning sky. The constellations will overhead in their eternal dance, the same patterns that Egyptian astronomers study and map, the same stars that guide sailors and mark the passage of seasons. The Egyptians are accomplished astronomers, tracking the movements of celestial bodies with remarkable precision, using this knowledge to create their calendar, to determine the timing of religious festivals, to predict the arrival of the annual flood. They see in the stars not just navigation aids but sacred signs, manifestations of divine order. The regular, predictable movements of celestial bodies reflect and reinforce the Egyptian concept of cosmic order, the fundamental rightness and balance that must be maintained in all things. When the stars follow their appointed paths, when the sun rises and sets as it should, when the Nile floods at the proper time, this is evidence that the cosmic order persists, that chaos has not triumphed, that the world continues as it should. Your boat drifts through this starlit darkness, this threshold between night and coming day, this liminal space where the world feels suspended, poised between states, peaceful in its in-betweenness. The movement is so gentle now that you barely feel it, just the slightest rocking, the softest sensation of floating, of being carried by something larger than yourself. The air has cooled to its nighttime minimum, pleasantly mild, perhaps 70 degrees, perfect for rest. A light breeze moves across the water, carrying with it the complex sense of the Nile Valley, the smell of water and vegetation, of distant fires and sleeping earth, of life continuing in its ancient patterns. You pass another village, or perhaps it is a small town, difficult to tell in the darkness. A few lights burn, pinpoints of warm gold against the dark land. Most people are asleep now, resting through the coolest hours, preparing for another day of labor when the sun returns. Their dreams are mysteries, lost to time, but we can imagine they are not so different from dreams anywhere. processing the experiences of the day, working through anxieties, replaying memories, sometimes touching on hopes and fears too deep for waking thought. Sleep in the ancient world follows different patterns than sleep in the modern age. Without artificial light, people naturally align their sleep cycles with the sun, going to bed soon after dark and rising at or before dawn. But sleep is often broken into segments: a first sleep, then a period of wakefulness in the deep night, then a second sleep before morning. During the wakeful period, people might tend fires, check on animals, make love, pray, simply sit and think in the quiet darkness. This segmented sleep pattern is natural to humans, encoded in our biology, though modern life with its artificial lighting and demanding schedules has largely erased it. But here, in ancient Egypt, people still sleep as humans have slept for countless millennia, responding to natural rhythms rather than artificial schedules. On the western bank, barely visible in the starlight, the desert cliffs rise in their eternal watch. By day they are golden and beautiful, but now they are simply dark masses, mysterious and somewhat ominous. Beyond them, stretching away into infinity, lies the vast Sahara, one of the harshest environments on Earth, a sea of sand and stone where almost nothing lives, where water is so scarce that to venture in unprepared is to die. The Egyptians rarely venture into the deep desert. There is nothing there for them, nothing worth the danger. But the desert's edge is valuable. It provides stone for building, minerals for pigments and tools, a boundary that protects Egypt from invasion from the west. The desert is both barrier and resource, threat and protection, the chaos that defines by contrast the order of the fertile valley. Your boat continues its drift, and you find yourself growing drowsy, lulled by the gentle motion, the soft sounds of water, the peace of the night. There is something deeply restful about being on water, about surrendering to its movement, about trusting in its support. Water is the first environment we know, the amniotic fluid of the womb, and perhaps some part of us always remembers that, always finds comfort in floating, in being held by liquid, in the gentle rocking that mimics the movements felt before birth. The Egyptians understood the sacred nature of water. The Nile was not just a river but a god, a living divine presence, the source of all life and prosperity. To be on the Nile was to be in the presence of the divine, to be held by forces both natural and supernatural, to participate in the great cosmic cycle of flood and recession, death and rebirth, that sustained all existence. Ahead, on the eastern bank, you notice something that glows faintly in the darkness, a small fire on the shore, and near it, the silhouettes of figures. Fishermen, perhaps, tending night lines, or travelers who have made camp for the night, or people engaged in some nocturnal task that cannot wait for daylight. The scene is peaceful, companionable, the firelight creating a small sphere of warmth and safety in the vast darkness. As your boat drifts past, you can hear low voices, cannot make out words but can sense the tone, calm, unhurried, the conversation of people who are comfortable with each other and with the night. The fire crackles softly, sparks drifting upward, tiny points of light that rise and dim and disappear like earthbound stars returning briefly to the sky. Then you are past, and the fire becomes a memory, a warm image that stays with you as you continue your journey. The river flows on, patient and eternal, caring nothing for the small dramas of human life, simply doing what it has always done, what it will always do, flowing northward, carrying water from the heart of Africa to the Mediterranean, sustaining life along its banks, making civilization possible. The eastern horizon is definitely lighter now. Not yet the light of dawn, but its herald, its promise. The deepest part of night has passed. The world is beginning its slow turn toward morning, though morning is still far enough away that you can rest, can drift, can let sleep come if it wishes. A bird calls somewhere in the darkness, a single clear note that carries across the water. Another answers from a different direction. These are not the raucous calls of day birds but the sounds of night hunters or water birds that are active in the hours before dawn, creatures whose lives are lived in the margins between day and night, at home in both worlds. The Egyptians paid close attention to birds, saw in them sacred significance. Different birds were associated with different gods, different qualities, different powers. The ibis with wisdom and writing, the falcon with the sun and kingship, the vulture with motherhood and protection. Birds were messengers between earth and sky, between human and divine realms, their flight a form of freedom that humans could only dream of. Your boat passes through a narrow section of the river where the banks draw closer, where the current flows a bit faster. You can feel the increased motion, the slight acceleration, nothing alarming but enough to be noticeable. Then the river widens again, the current slows, and you return to the gentle drift that has characterized most of your journey. Time has lost its usual meaning on this voyage. How long have you been on the water? Hours, certainly, but how many? It hardly matters. Clock time is a modern obsession, a way of carving up existence into measurable units. But here, on the Nile in ancient Egypt, time is measured differently, by the sun's position, by the stars' movement, by internal rhythms of hunger and tiredness, by the natural flow of activities through their proper sequences. The Egyptians had ways of measuring time, water clocks, shadow clocks, observations of the stars. But these were tools for priests and astronomers, for timing religious rituals and tracking celestial movements. Common people lived by a vaguer sense of time, by morning and noon and evening, by seasons and festivals, by the rhythm of work and rest. This slower, less precise relationship with time has advantages. There is less pressure, less sense of racing against some arbitrary deadline. Things happen when they happen, when the conditions are right, when the natural order allows. This can seem inefficient by modern standards, but it can also be deeply restful, releasing humans from the tyranny of the clock, allowing life to flow at a more organic pace. Let yourself settle deeper into this ancient rhythm now. Let go of any remaining connection to modern time, to schedules and deadlines and the press of obligations. Here, on this boat, in this ancient night, there is only the present moment, only the gentle rocking of the vessel, only the soft sounds of water and breeze, only the peaceful darkness slowly giving way to coming light. The stars are beginning to fade, their brightness dimming as the sky continues its gradual lightening. The brightest ones remain visible, but the fainter stars are disappearing, washed out by the approaching dawn. Soon only the morning star will remain, that bright beacon that the Egyptians associated with various gods, that herald of sunrise, that last light to surrender to the day. But sunrise is still far off. There are hours yet of this peaceful twilight, this gentle transition, this suspended time between night and day. And you need not stay awake for the sunrise. You can let sleep come now, can surrender to the deep rest that the journey has prepared you for, can drift into dreams as easily as your boat drifts on the eternal river. The sound of the water is hypnotic, a soft constant presence that soothes and calms. The rhythm of the boat's motion is like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring, the pulse of life itself. The air is perfect, neither too hot nor too cold, requiring nothing from you, asking only that you breathe it, that you exist in it, that you let it support you. Imagine now that you can feel the boat beneath you becoming softer, more yielding, transforming into the most comfortable bed you have ever known. The cushions you recline on are perfect, supporting you exactly where you need support, allowing you to relax completely. The motion of the water is like being rocked in the gentlest of cradles, a movement so soothing that it pulls you inexorably towards sleep. Your breathing has slowed and deepened. Each breath in brings peace. Each breath out releases tension, releases thought, releases everything that is not needed for this moment. In, out, in, out. The rhythm is natural as the river's flow, as ancient as life itself. The stars will overhead, though you may not be watching them anymore, may have closed your eyes, may be drifting in that space between waking and sleeping where the world becomes dreamlike, where boundaries blur, where you are both here and not here, both present and dissolving into something larger. 3,000 years separate your time from this ancient Egyptian night, but in this moment, those 3,000 years collapse to nothing. The same stars shine above. The same river flows below. The same human need for rest and peace and connection to something larger than ourselves draws you into sleep as it has drawn countless humans into sleep since the beginning of our kind. You are floating on the river of time itself, drifting backward into history, forward into dreams, suspended in the eternal now where past and future meet. The ancient Egyptians understood this, understood that time is not a line but a cycle, not a movement away from the past but a constant return to it, the same patterns repeating eternally, the same sun rising and setting, the same Nile flooding and receding, the same stars wheeling overhead. Nothing truly ends. Nothing is lost. Everything returns. This is the comfort that Egyptian cosmology offered, the hope that sustained their civilization through millennia. And tonight, on this river, in this boat, you can feel the truth of it, can sense the eternal nature of the patterns, can rest in the knowledge that some things persist, that the great cycles continue, that you are part of something vast and ongoing. Let yourself go now. Let the boat carry you. Let the river support you. Let the ancient night embrace you. Let sleep come gently, naturally, inevitably, like the tide, like the flood, like all the rhythms that govern existence. The water flows beneath you, the stars shine above you, and between them you rest, held safe, carried forward, drifting into deep and peaceful sleep. The journey continues, but you need not witness it. The river knows where it is going. The boat knows how to float. And you, traveler through time, can simply rest, can sleep, can dream the ancient dreams that have sustained humanity since we first learned to shape stories and find meaning in the turning of the sky. And morning, when it comes, will find you restored, renewed, connected to something timeless and profound. But that is for later. Now there is only sleep. Only peace. Only the eternal river carrying you home to rest.